All right, guys, we are back. Week 1 is finally here. The Chicago Bears are finally playing their first NFL game of the year against the Tennessee Titans, who are no slouch of a team. So really quick, just to get that out the way, I know a lot of people have the Bears winning against the Titans pretty easily. I've been seeing some really high-scoring games. We're going to put up like 30 points, and they're going to, lose by 20 or whatever. We're going to beat them like 35-15 or something crazy. I don't really think that's going to happen here. I'm going to explain why. So we're going to start off real quick. We're just going to jump right into it. Start off with the Titans offense with the quarterback, Will Levis, actually. So Will Levis, it's kind of hard to determine what he is right now. The jury's still out on him on whether he's a good quarterback or not. He only played 9 games last year, so he kind of came in through the middle of the season. And if you guys remember his first NFL game, he threw 4 touchdowns that game. 3 of them went to DeAndre Hopkins. And it was a really good start to his career, but so far it's been really up and down. So you've had those high highs, like, him throwing those first 4 touchdowns. You've had those other highs where he came back down 2 scores against the Miami Dolphins late in the fourth quarter. But then you have his few lows, and a lot of his lows were very low. So, for example, right, last year he threw 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and just over 1,800 yards. Pretty, decent, I guess, for a rookie. The only problem is you recognize the 8 touchdowns. He threw half of those in one game, and then threw only 4 touchdowns the rest of the other 8 games he played, which averages out to about 1 touchdown every 2 games, which is not ideal for a guy who's supposed to be your future. So obviously that was his rookie year, kind of being thrown in there in the middle of the year. I don't really think he was supposed to even play at all his rookie season. I think ideally they would just want to have Tannehill be the guy, but he got thrown in there to be the quarterback, and now he's going into his, I guess, second year being his starter. And, if you take a look at last year's stats, like I said, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 1,800 yards. If you extrapolate that to 17 games, actually doing the math right here on my phone, the yards would come out to just over 3,400 yards, 15 touchdowns passing, and 8 interceptions. So not a bad, or not a terrible, I should say, stat line. You obviously wouldn't want that from a guy like Caleb Williams. Only 15 touchdowns would be pretty abysmal, and 3,400 yards would definitely be less than ideal for a quarterback who's number 1 overall. But he was drafted in the second round, so obviously not as high as guys like Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud last year in the same draft class. But when it comes to Will Levis, man, we don't know for sure if he's a guy or not. And I guess this season's really gonna show for us whether he's the guy or not. But going around to the rest of the offense, so I guess we'll start with the offensive line. You got J.C. Latham, who they drafted, I believe, 7th overall. Then they got Peter Skoronski, who they drafted last year at 12th overall. Then they got I forgot what their center's name is. Completely forgot they actually picked up Lloyd Cushenberry from the Denvers in free agency. So they've got a pretty good, solid, left side of the line. The 2 guys on the right, I don't really know their names, but not that great. So their offensive line last year actually was pretty terrible, which is why they addressed it this year. And even though it should be upgraded, because they were the worst offensive line last year statistically, so they can't get any worse, I guess. But even though they got a little bit better in terms of the upgrades they made, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go from being the worst to being the absolute best. It's just not ideal to make that kind of jump, or not realistic, I should say, to make that kind of jump, at least in the first year. So for the Titans offensive line, they're going to have to improve if they want Will Levis to succeed. So I believe our defensive line can really handle that, their offensive line, so I'm not really too scared about that. They do have at wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, who may or may not play. I know he's battling something with his knee. Not too sure if he's going to play. I don't really think they should play him because it's the first game of the season. But, it is we are kind of a tough team to go against and a tough defense to go against, so I wouldn't really blame them if they did. But at the other wide receiver spot, they got Calvin Ridley, who they signed to a massive extension this past off season. And 29 years old, I believe he is 29 or 30 years old, but he's a young 29, 30 because he's been, suspended for a year. And he came into the league at a pretty old age for a rookie. I think he was 23 or 24 years old. So he's not exactly a 29-year-old, a regular 29-year-old in the NFL. I guess he's more like a 29-year-old and a 27-year-old and a 29-year-old body or something like that. But either way, Calvin Ridley's still a pretty decent receiver, nothing like a Justin Jefferson or anything like that, but he's still a really good receiver, and he can definitely make trouble for you if you let him. So I think we're gonna have to watch out for him And then we have Tyler Boyd at the wide receiver 3. The slot position's one of the better receivers. Underrated slot guy, but also he's getting older too, so I'm not really too scared about him. At the running back position, you got Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, who's a, I guess, decent duo, but once again, nothing that really scares me considering that the Bears were the best run defense last year. So I really don't think that Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears are going to really do anything in terms of, like, you know, not exactly like a Saquon Barkley or a CMC there. So I'm not really too scared of that either. Their tight end as well, Awuzie, I forgot what their tight end has a really long name. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but he's okay at best. He's solid. He's kind of like just average to below average. I'm not really scared of that. But then going on to the Titans defense here, their D-line is kind of what scares me the most. And they made a lot of upgrades on the defense, you know, in particular, but their D-line also is kind of what scares me because they got pretty much solid pieces everywhere. So first off, they got none other than Jeffrey Simmons, the star on the D-line, defensive tackle, who's just an absolute wrecking ball, will absolutely destroy any offensive lineman. They got Tavondre Sweat, who they drafted in the 3rd round, just a big dude, probably a run-stopping guy. So Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat are going to be really, you know, big tests for our interior offensive line. So that kind of scared me. And on the edge, you got Harold Landry and Arden Key, who are two, you know, pretty solid edge rushers, and they can definitely get home if we let them. So other guys we're going to have to watch for as well. Their linebacking core is pretty solid as well. They've got Jamal Adams. Actually, they acquired him, but he's not playing this game. In terms of defensive backs, though, they got L'Jarius Sneed in there, Chidobe Awuzie. I think that's what the guy they picked up. Yeah, so it was Chidobe Awuzie. I actually had to pull up the roster on my phone here, and I actually want to go back to linebackers. And they forgot they got Ernest Jones from the Rams, who did really good for them last year, and I believe they got them for like a 4th or 5th round pick. So that's a really good pickup for the Titans. And they also got Kenneth Murray Jr., who's been a very solid linebacker in this league for a while. Doesn't really scare me a whole lot, but he can still, you know, cause trouble for you. Going back to the defensive backs, they got L'Jarius Sneed, who they traded for this past offseason, who was one of the better corners last year in the league. And if he does anything like he was last year, man, he'll be a lockdown on their side. So it'll suck forwards on the other side, you know, being covered by L'Jarius Sneed, because, like I said, if he was anything like he was last year, man, he'll be solid. He'll be really good, and he'll be locking down our wide receiver 1. But the good news is we got 3 of them, which I'll talk about in a bit. But at safety, they got Mike Brown, Quandre Diggs, and Armani Hooker. So those are pretty solid safeties. And now, like I said, they don't have like a lot of like stars, not like the 49ers or anything, but they do have Jeffrey Simmons and they do have L'Jarius Sneed. And if those 2 guys, you know, play this year the way they've been playing their entire careers, man, they're going to be great players, and they're going to make this team just a whole lot better. You know, they were already kind of middle of the pack last year. You know, they weren't the worst, but they weren't the best. But man, they could make this defense really take a step up if things go their way. Now, taking a look at the Bears here, obviously Caleb Williams, the main guy. Obviously, we don't know what he is yet because we haven't seen him play in the NFL regular season yet. Looked pretty solid in preseason, but it's just preseason, so we can't really, you know, base anything off that just yet. Then you've got the receivers and DJ Moore. You've got Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze, who we drafted 9th overall. At tight end, we've got Cole Kmet. We've got Gerald Everett. So 2 really good, solid tight ends. And then our running backs, man, we're really deep at running back this year, especially, man. We're always deep at running back, I feel like, but this year is just crazy. We got DeAndre Swift, a really solid running back. You got Khalil Herbert, really efficient running back. You got Roshan Johnson, really much your like power guy, your pass catching back. And then on top of it, the very surprising one is Velus Jones Jr., who, you know, a lot of people thought he was going to get cut this season, maybe even traded or something like that. And actually, Ryan Poles did have an opportunity to trade him and declined it. But, you know, found a new role as being a running back. And as we saw against the Chiefs in the preseason, did pretty good. But once again, like I said about Caleb Williams, it's just preseason, so we can't really, you know, I mean, the jury's still out on him, basically, still, when it comes to running back, at least, because we don't know how he is a running back. We know that he's a terrible receiver. We know that for sure. But who knows? Maybe he blossoms into a decent running back, and I hope he, you know, does, because that pretty much will be the only way he stays on his team. That and his special team's ability. And then on the offensive line, too, which is probably going to be the most important aspect of this game, you've got Braxton Jones in there. You got Tevin Jenkins, who I feel really solid about, or really good about. You've got Coleman Shelton in there, we just picked up from the Rams. He's a pretty good center. Nate Davis, who is my biggest question mark and my biggest red flag on the offensive line. And then you've got Nate Davis. Darnell Wright at right tackle, who we drafted 10th overall last year. Who's been just really solid, just really good as a rookie. And hopefully he takes that next step up to be just a cornerstone right tackle, a cornerstone lineman for us. Then hopping onto the defense, you've got Montez Sweat, the leader of that defensive line. Next to him, you got Javon Dexter and Andrew Billings, who are both, really good defensive tackles. We obviously want Javon Dexter to take that second-year leap, and we want Andrew Billings to continue being the monster he is, plugging up the run game. And on the other side is kind of where things get questionable. We do have Austin Booker, we drafted in the 5th round, and he looks really good in preseason. But once again, preseason is just preseason. We got to see him in regular games against starters and stuff like that, against real schemes and stuff. So we don't know for sure. But on there, we also got DeMarcus Walker. We've got Darrell Taylor. We got a couple guys who are questionable, which is kind of worrisome. But I feel like most of those guys should be all right and ready to go. It's probably just a precautionary thing. And then for the linebacker core, we've got Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Jack Sanborn. Make a really good, solid linebacking duo. And then at corner and defensive back in general, Jalen Johnson, kind of the leader of our defense. On the other side, Tyreek Stevenson going into his second year, just a really solid corner. Was struggling a bit in his rookie season, but second half really picked it up. Turned into a lockdown corner, a ball hawk even. And I really hope he takes that second year leap for us. Then in the slot, you've got Kyler Gordon, who made a lot of changes, made a lot of adjustments, but is finally, kind of settling into his own as a slot corner. And then you go on to the safeties here, but we kind of upgraded a little bit, not too much. We kind of upgraded with Kevin Byard, who we picked up from free agency, who was previously with the Eagles. I believe that was a bit of an upgrade over Eddie Jackson, because Eddie Jackson was just terrible in coverage, and tackling really too was also his weakness. And I think Kevin Byard is a much better tackler. We'll see how he does in coverage, but I think he's definitely a much better tackler at the very least. And then last but not least, Jaquan Brisker at strong safety. And man, if he can just stay healthy, bro, he will be a great safety in this league. But that's just a thing. A lot of our guys on the offensive line and in other positions too, injuries have been his problem. He just needs to stay healthy. And if he just stays healthy, man, he'll be a very solid piece of our defense. And he has always been whenever he's on the field. So that's the kind of team comparison. I know that was kind of long, but I'm not going to do this every single game. Just for the first game, it's kind of be a little longer just because we're starting off everything with a new year, new team and everything, new rosters. And going into, what I think about this game, what I think the Bears are gonna win, or they're gonna lose. And personally, guys, I think the Bears are gonna lose this game with a score of 20-17. And I'll explain real quick why I think that. So, thing is, history is not too kind to quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks specifically, starting week 1. As a matter of fact, the last rookie quarterback, or last first overall pick, I believe, to win their week 1 game or first game was actually all the way back in 2002, which was David Carr for the Texans. And since then, quarterbacks have been 0-14-1. Since then, not a single win out of one of those. Now, I know it's a little different with Caleb because we're not really the worst team in football. We weren't really the worst team in football last year. We just got it off the Panthers pick. But still a rookie quarterback, man. Still is going to make rookie mistakes. It's going to be questionable throws, and that's going to be okay. It's his first game. He just needs to get reps in the game. And I think the Titans defense is just good enough to give Caleb Williams enough problems for them to win. But I don't think Will Levis is good enough yet to take on a Bears defense and put up like 30, 40 points on our heads like a Patrick Mahomes or whatever. But I still do think he has enough experience to be able to put up maybe at least 17, 20 points, just enough to do a little bit more than Caleb Williams. So it's just kind of really just a battle of defenses here. And I'm going to trust that, Will Levis, who has many more games under his belt than Caleb Williams in the NFL, because he has like 9 and Caleb has literally 0. I really think that Caleb Williams is going to lose his first NFL game with a final score of 17-20. Could I be wrong here? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I hope I am wrong. If I am wrong, please come back to this video and tell me how much of an idiot I am. I would like nothing more than just be wrong about this, because I really want the Bears to finally win a week 1 game. I don't think we've done so. We did it back in 2022. What am I talking about? But still, it's not that often that it happens. And I just want this season to be set up for success. And hopefully, Caleb Williams is able to pull off a W here. But I just don't think so, just because the Titans are a little bit more solid. And I think people need to give them a little bit more credit than what they're actually giving him. So let me know what you guys think, man. Agree, disagree. I guess just let me know in the comments your little score predictions down below. But bear down and I'm out.